So it doesn't really go anywhere, and it doesn't really do anything interesting. And there are a bunch of things I do like about it, but those are drowned out by a sea of mediocrity and tedium.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back. The Eye of the Storm podcast. I'm here with my boys, Hervey and Daniel.
Yo.
Hi.
Guys, before we even get into the main discussion, which will be about Ghostbusters, what's the best recent thing you two have seen last week that you should plug our audience onto?
I mean, mine's divided opinion between the three of us. Daniel watched 30 minutes and couldn't watch anymore. Jonathan thinks it's a little bit cool, but I loved what I was seeing, and that is Three Body Problem. And it's actually quite difficult because I've only watched 2 episodes of it. So it's quite even difficult to explain kind of what's going on because it gets like really trippy. But it's essentially it's actually very hard to describe what the hell's going on in that series, to be honest. But there's this like thing where they're trying to communicate with the outer world, and anyone that sort of kind of like believes in science is like trying to push science is essentially being silenced and sort of maybe potentially being killed and stuff like that. And there's this like whole mystery of communicating with the outer world, which we're still unraveling. I'm only 2 episodes in. I was immediately gripped by it. I think Daniel probably agrees that the opening, like sort of part of it, the opening like of the first episode was like really well. It was like really interesting, really gripping. And I felt like it stayed throughout. I feel like it's a really interesting series, really interesting mystery. I'm looking forward to unwrapping more of it.
Yeah, I thought the opening scene in the Cultural Revolution was really strong, and that was really disturbing. Like this whole frenzy of the crowd, and like if you know the history of that, they even pulled their punches. That was a brutal time, and people got caught up, and lives were destroyed by the millions. And I thought that scene was really strong, and after that, I thought it went way downhill. But for me, not really in terms of quality or anything specific that was wrong. It's more like I just didn't like the whole vibe of it. Like every line kind of rubbed me the wrong way, no matter what they were saying. There's a lot of cliches about science that are just my pet peeves, and didn't like any of the characters, and I just didn't enjoy it, so I didn't continue.
Well, if you're not a scientist like me and have no clue what the hell they're saying about any of the science stuff, you might love it. You might like it.
That's the reason why I just found it to be cool so far, because I'm still on. So I'm on episode 3 now, I believe, right? But because I don't fully understand what the hell they're talking about when it comes to the whole science part of it, that's why I'm like, okay. So far, it's good, but what did I say? It's all right. It's all right so far, but I'm still, like I said, I'm 2 episodes in. I want to see how it ends, but it's because I don't fully understand what the hell's going on. That's what I'm trying to get. It's like while you're watching it, you really have to have your thinking caps on. You know what I'm saying? Like Daniel, obviously like you said, there's pet peeves when they're science references, etc., etc. So you know more when it comes to the science stuff. That's why I understand where you're coming from, because you know more when it comes more to the science stuff. Why you don't like it? For me, I don't really have a choice, because I don't know what the you know what I'm saying. I'm figuring out what the hell's going on. So that's why I feel like it's just cool so far. But I'm 3 episodes in, so.
Yeah, and I've seen like screen grabs from later in the series, and it looks like something I would really enjoy. I just can't stand the writing.
Honestly, like the trailer looked amazing. I even downloaded the instrumental when I finished watching the trailer. That's how good the trailer was.
I would say that in terms of the characters, I know it's got Wong in there from the Marvel series. Him, I haven't completely bought into him as like the detective, and like I'm not kind of fully behind him just yet. He doesn't have the gravitas to suave,
He shocked me so bad when he started talking. I had probably the same shock factor from hearing him speak British, from hearing his accent be British, the same with Idris Elba when I found out that he was British.
Wong was British.
I didn't know he was British.
Oh yeah.
I had no idea. That's why when he started speaking, when his accent was like proper like Cockney British, I was like, whoa, what the hell is going on?
He's local. He's a local lad, so yeah. But yeah, he's kind of like the only character that I haven't completely bought into of the series yet. But honestly, like, and you know what's even funny is that I know everyone's currently raving about The Gentleman, and I don't know whether you recommended it, Jonathan.
Yeah.
But I watched 20 minutes of that and I said, this is garbage. I was like, this, I don't know.
Oh my God.
It's like, it started off completely weak. It was very uninteresting. I feel like a good story has to grip you within the first like 10, 15 minutes, and it just did none of that. It was a bit of a miss. Whereas this one, I was on board from the get-go.
Damn, you didn't like The Gentleman?
No.
Hey man, it's not for everyone, but alright. Well, Daniel, do you have anything interesting that you saw last week?
So this week I watched Mystery Men, which is a 1999 superhero comedy movie, which it's basically a parody of the entire superhero genre. Where the plot is essentially there's the Superman-like character called Amazing Man or something like that. Captain Amazing. And he basically has defeated all the villains, and so he has basically made himself obsolete. So he conspires to have one of the villains released from prison so that he has somebody to fight again, which backfires, and he ends up imprisoned. And so these D-list heroes have to kind of step up and defeat the villain. And the whole thing is basically just a skeleton to hang superhero jokes on. And it's just a really enjoyable movie. Like a lot of the jokes really land. And I really like all the attention to detail. Like there's lots of side gags, lots of background gags. The set design is great. It's like in the 90s they made movies differently, where like the background of scenes was often very intricate and very carefully arranged, which is the complete opposite of what's normal today. And it's just like one gag after the other. Like the story isn't the important part; it's all the different gags. So yeah, and it came out something like 10 years too early, because it kind of came out at a time where the superhero genre already was a joke, and so nobody cared. It made something like 30 million at the box office, completely flopped, and it's kind of become a cult classic since then. And I think if it came out 10, 15 years later, it would have found more of an audience because people wouldn't have gotten the joke a bit more.
Actually, sounds quite interesting, to be fair. It sounds very interesting.
And it's got like all these, like it's got Ben Stiller as Mr. Furious, a superhero who is always angry, and that's where he gets his power from. William H. Macy as the shoveler, who just like hits people with a shovel. There's Paul Rubens, or known as the Spleen, whose power is flatulence.
Is it what, sorry?
Flatulence.
Flatulence.
He has fart-based powers. Like it's that kind of movie, and it's just great.
What vibe would you say is similar? Like not similar to, but kind of gives off similar vibes to when it comes to like the whole hero genre.
In terms of its humor, it's kind of similar to Austin Powers, except it's about superheroes instead of spy movies.
Okay.
That's a good. That's a good vibe to go for, or like to have in your movie. So that was great.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not current, but it's been on my list to watch for a while, and I watched and finally got around to watching it this week, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, so you're gonna watch it again this week?
No, it has been on my list for a while, and I got to watch it this week.
Okay, cool.
And
cool.
I enjoyed it.
Okay, cool. When did it come out? Sorry.
1999.
Okay.
I think it got buried under a bunch of huge movies as well. Like that, I think that was a summer where a lot of stuff came out, so that didn't help it either. So it kind of found a second life on VHS and DVD and Blu-ray.
Cool. All right. Well, what did I watch? Roadhouse. Yes, the new Prime film. I believe it's a remake. Yeah, I believe it was a remake. I'm not sure. I think it was a remake, but pretty much an ex-UFC fighter with a secret in his past that kind of haunts him. Takes a bouncer job at a place called Roadhouse. I believe it's like a bar restaurant with a band playing music 24/7. But pretty much, there's a lot of debate. So they hired him because obviously he's a good fighter. He's a very great fighter, and the bar's known for a lot of alcoholics, drunks, criminals, like people who like to cause trouble go to Roadhouse. So they hired what was his name in the film? Elwood, that's his name. But it was played by Jake Gyllenhaal. So Is that how you pronounce his name?
Gyllenhaal.
Gyllenhaal. Sorry, but yeah, they hired him, and yeah, he's just beating up a lot of people, man. He's just beating up a lot of people. It was fun. I think this movie, the plot, like the storyline, it's just a fun film. It's a fun film. Memorable choreography because obviously Conor McGregor was the antagonist, so and UFC style was really fun. I think the visuals were just amazing. Like just the choreography. I think the highlight of the film was definitely the choreography of just the whole UFC elements, martial arts incorporated to this. So I think it's a fun film. It's worth the watch. Yeah, don't look for like some sort of in-depth, deep. I wouldn't say it was a gripping. Wouldn't say the storyline was gripping, but it was satisfactory. I just think the. I just think it's just an entertainment. It's an entertainment film. That's what it is. That's what it is. Yeah.
Better than The Beekeeper.
Yeah. BK was still good, but BK was still good. But this one it had more depth when it comes to the storyline in comparison to the Beekeeper, definitely.
Better than Madam Web.
Yeah. Yeah. It was better than Madam. It was better than Madam Web. Oh yeah. Oh, you guys are funny. You guys are funny. Well, all right, guys.
I guess.
Huh?
I was going to say on that note,
Yeah.
while we're all here, Ghostbusters. Is it The Frozen Empire?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jonathan, kick us off, man.
Okay. First half of the film was solid enough to make the film be an above average film. It was definitely better than what I expected. Because guys, I'm a trailer type of guy. I know Javi, I don't know if you're a trailer type, because I know Daniel isn't. Like he doesn't like going off trailers. Do you like going off trailers?
I don't like people who make trailers. That's
Oh,
a distinction.
okay, sorry, apologies.
I don't care for trailers unless it's something I'm like really interested in. I mean, I will watch trailers, but I don't make my opinion based off of trailers.
Okay, well, I'm that guy where the trailer has to grip me in order for me to go and watch the film, majority of the time. So when I saw the trailer to this one, I wasn't looking forward to it. There wasn't nothing really stood out for me. But like I said, the film was definitely better than what I expected. The first, and that's purely based on the first half. I think the first half was, the first half was like the film was funnier than what I thought it was gonna be. Do you know what I'm saying? I thought it was gonna be one of those corny type of movies with corny jokes, but it wasn't. It was, I think, individual performances, especially from Nadeem, is what kind of. That's not a spoiler, is it? Just revealing that character. No, it's not a spoiler. Yeah, Nadeem. So Nadeem's character, watch out for him. I think he definitely brought the humor into this film, and yeah, man, I just think it was individual performances and character interactions is what made the film good for me. But like I said, it was an above average film. It wasn't a great film. Like it wasn't a memorable film. Like there wasn't anything memorable. There wasn't any scenes memorable, but yeah, like I said, it was an above average film. Yeah, it was an above average film, which was let down by the second half, which was let down by Act 3. But we'll get into that later.
Cool. Well, I thought it was a good movie. Whether it remains that by the time that we finish this review and Daniel's completely picked it apart might be completely good. But I thought it was just good. Like if I look at the lens of if I was like a lot younger and I'd watched this movie, I probably would have had a little bit more. I would have had more fun with it than I did. I disagree with you. I don't think it was funny. I don't think anything about it was like really that funny. It got maybe like one or two like laughs out of me. I don't think it was really that funny. I don't think the Deem's character was really that funny either.
I said funnier than I expected. Sorry, I said funnier than I expected.
Yeah, like his like Nadeem's character was just your stupid, your like typical kind of comedic relief that they throw in some of these movies where he's just
like Nadeem.
Yeah, where he's just completely clueless. He's like a grown man baby, and it's like the gag's played out now. I feel like we've seen it in enough movies now. The gag's played out. It's not as funny as it used to be. I I do agree with you. I feel like the kind of like the first two parts of the movie were, probably the most interesting parts. Gets a little bit convoluted. There's like a few like storylines that aren't completely followed through, which is disappointing. And we'll touch on that in the spoiler section probably. The act 3 was just silly. It was silly. It just became generic CGI monster trying to like destroy everything, which was quite disappointing, to be honest. Again, I've not really watched a lot of like the previous Ghostbusters movies. But what it does feel like is that they probably like moved away from what Ghostbusters probably initially was, and whether that's a good thing, whether that's a bad thing, you can catch your opinions on that in the Monday episode that's coming out in terms of sort of these forever franchises and how they need to move forward. But I don't know. It was good. Like I actually really enjoyed. So they kind of pushed the daughter to be sort of kind of like the main focal point of the movie, and I feel like she brought enough character and brought enough heart to the story for me. Like anytime she was on screen, I actually quite enjoyed her. They did.
By the daughter, you mean Phoebe?
Phoebe, yeah, Phoebe. They didn't make her the typical angry teen. They did have that parent-child conflict, but they did it in a little bit more interesting way than sort of kind of what's done in most movies. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's at least different to what's been portrayed, in other movies, which was quite interesting. And yeah, I think she was probably my highlight character in all of this. Granted that not a lot of the characters really have that much to work with in this movie, because again, it's a bit bloated, a bit convoluted. So that's my thoughts. Daniel, turn this movie from a good to a terrible for me.
So this is not the worst movie I've seen this year, but it is the most tedious viewing experience I had, because I really, I think the movie is really poorly put together. So it's overflowing with stuff, right? But that none of it really rises to being good enough to carry the movie. So the comedy is not funny enough. The ghost busting isn't inventive enough. The ghosts aren't creative enough. The character arcs are broken for the most part. They have beginnings but not conclusions in most cases. Like a lot of time is spent expanding the lore and the mythology, but that also doesn't really go anywhere or add up very much. So and on top of that, I thought the writing was really terrible. So normally when I watch a movie, a few times a movie, I have like ideas for how to make the line better. Here I had it in almost every line, and I'm not a writer, not even a writer, right? So I really think as a movie this is really, really poor, and mostly it's lack of polish and lack of focus. So it doesn't really go anywhere, and it doesn't really do anything interesting. And there are a bunch of things I do like about it, but those are drowned out by a sea of mediocrity and tedium.
Well, that falls into the next question. What did we like about the film?
So highlight for me was Nadim. He's the only Ghostbusters character in this.
As you see, I don't know what Herbert was sipping on.
So he shows up at a used bookstore and says, I've got a box full of magical artifacts. This is ancient cultural heritage. I want at least $50. That's Ghostbusters.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I haven't watched the previous Ghostbusters movie, so I can't.
And as Ray keeps going through the box and finding interesting things, the price keeps going up.
Yeah.
Right? That is Ghostbusters. Like if the entire movie was like that, then it would be. I would have said, okay, the franchise is now back to form, because that's the essence, right? This schlubby, greasy griftering. On top of the sci-fi occult sci-fi weirdness, that's basically Ghostbusters. And you don't like a franchise doesn't have to stay what it was originally, but this is what the original joke was, right? And I think Ghostbuster stories since the original two have really lost sight of that, and they occasionally look in the general direction of that stuff in this movie, but they never really get there, and the movie isn't focused on it. And it's also not focused on anything else because there's too much stuff going on. There's too many characters. There's too many aborted arcs. There's too much flirted with. Like I really like the idea of there having been Ghostbusters in the past that kind of hit on the same science but went about it differently. Like the Fire Masters, I think were a really cool idea, but it's also not developed and also doesn't go anywhere. And then in the end, Nadim just turns into a joke. But when he's like this kind of like like grifter charlatan just out for a quick buck, completely nonchalant about these cosmic forces. That's pure Ghostbusters.
I think you're right for that.
And I do believe, and I think we all have a common issue, is the end. Because one of the things I did like about the film was how high the villain's threat was. Like, I felt like, okay, if this golden ball, whatever it was, is released, I can just sense and feel that it's gonna be bad. And then when it was released in the second part, like probably say nearly near the end, was it near the end of Act 2 or just in the middle of Act 2? In Act 2, when it was released, it was like, okay, I can, like, visually, it looks scary. I just felt its presence to be very dark, and I felt it to be very critical, and I felt it, I could feel the fear factor, but it was just the way that, you know, the way that they ended up the way that his story was ended in the third part. That's how I was like, okay, they kind of ruined, you know, they just ruined it. I don't know why they, like, he wasn't he was like, what's his name? It was like what's the guy's name in Avengers? Jonathan Majors. What was his character again? Kang, like he was building up to something great, but then at the end it was like, oh, like it was just a dud. Like there wasn't really much about him. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I thought it was like he was I thought the villain was gonna build up to something threatening and something powerful, but with obviously, but it didn't. Same with the villain in this film as well.
I feel like one, the idea of, you know, releasing this, like, you know, danger that was within this, like, kind of like brass ball was more interesting than the villain that actually came out of the brass ball. And two, I feel like they probably overpowered him to a point where it kind of completely lost me, where, you know, he comes out the ball and he's literally turning the whole city into ice. Like he basically should have killed everyone, because the temperatures that, you know, he'd set the city to was way too cold for what people were dressed for. So everyone should have been dead immediately. And the fact that he had everyone cornered, and the fact that he's like turning everyone into ice, you know, super quickly. But then, you know, these Ghostbusters, for some reason, they're, you know, being given a chance to live or whatever. And, you know, it just wasn't interesting what they've done with him. Whereas I feel like if he wasn't this complete, you know, big world-ending threat, and maybe it was just something that they, you know, I don't know, because I feel like a lot of these like movies make this mistake where the big bad has to be a world ender and like the whole world is going to end, whereas it doesn't always need to be that. It could be that, you know, he's got the potential to like kill like hundreds or whatever, and they need to like quickly contain it, or he like might be a major threat to, you know, one of the characters in the movies, and they need to do something to like save that person or whatever. Like even like for Phoebe's character, for example, like, you know, when she, and I think we're in the spoiler section, but when she takes her spirit out of her body and then he possesses her to like then release him from the orb or whatever, it could have been a lot more interesting if they have to save Phoebe. Like there's like some type of connection there that they have to like. I don't have the answers for it at the moment, but it could have been a little bit more interesting than what they did by making him this world threat, and he's just turned every block that you can see into ice, and everyone should be dead.
Yeah, about the villain, like there wasn't really a connection between his background and the ice powers and the plot. Like those things are completely disconnected.
Yeah.
I think that, and in the end, they just basically have a bigger trap. Like that's kind of the solution. And Nadim's fire bending powers that he had his entire life, but he never noticed that he could control flames. He never you know, looked at a candle in his life, apparently. Because there's no trick to it, right? He just needs to focus on it, and it just happens. So, but yeah, I think the one of the things you hit on there was that the villain kind of doesn't really make sense. Like there's different pieces to him, and they don't talk to each other.
No,
in my opinion, like there's nothing like this whole idea of there was this demon warlord 3,000 years ago and conquered half the world until he got to South Asia, and there was this this organization of proto Ghostbusters, and they stopped him. It's really cool, but nothing about his design or his powers or the way he operates is linked to that background. And it feels like they had the title of Frozen Empire first, and then said, "Oh, I guess we have to give the villain ice powers." but it didn't, like, the different pieces are completely disconnected in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, which act would you say disappointed you guys most, or made you guys clock out?
It was the third act. I mean, it was everything about the third act, to be honest. Because prior to that, again, although a lot of the stories didn't go anywhere, you had like some interesting pieces where, you know, you got like, because like I care a lot about like character conflicts, the way characters interact with each other and stuff like that. So you know, you had Paul Rudd's character, the father, who I didn't watch the previous movie, but it seems like he was previously their teacher and is now having to be the stepfather to these kids. So you've got something interesting there, which is introduced but doesn't really go anywhere. Like, it doesn't really lead to anything at all. That sort of, you know, that whole subplot.
So it's also not about family or coming together as a family or finding family or anything. Like, a lot of time is spent on Paul Rudd being the dad and whether he is the dad and what that means. Also doesn't add up too much, right? No,
yeah, literally, it doesn't. I mean, the thing that probably worked maybe best was like the whole Phoebe's interactions with the ghost. Well, I don't know what her name is. You might look to your left and tell me what her name was.
Melody.
Who?
Melody.
Like everything about that was like super interesting, you know, where she is deemed too young to be part of the Ghostbusters team, so she kind of feels a little bit bummed out about it, even though like she's probably like one of the smartest ones in the team and like can help them the most or whatever. She's just like in a park somewhere, and then she just like
at night alone playing chess alone.
Exactly, yeah, at night alone playing chess. Are you criticizing that?
Yes, I am.
I mean,
why does a 15-year-old go into a park in New York at night with a chessboard?
To meet a ghost, of course. Why else?
Right, but like they couldn't have written in like a friend, like she was supposed to meet a friend to play some chess, and then the friend stood her up, and now she doesn't want to go home because she doesn't want to look at her parents, and so she hangs out a little longer than she should. Like, that would have taken about 30 seconds to a minute of screen time to establish.
Yeah.
But they didn't. She just goes to the park because she has to meet the ghost.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I mean by not being.
See, I told you you're gonna make me like this movie less, because I didn't think about that.
But guys,
that's not where that came from. But the like that's kind of an like I think the that whole romance subplot I think is fine. I'm not really sure what Phoebe's arc is supposed to be, because it's not about learning responsibilities. Also not about or like any of the things you might think or that might be hinted at in the movie. But like I don't really see how her actions are either make that much sense or are that sympathetic. Yeah. Like, she kind of comes across as growing up, I knew a bunch of really smart people, and they tend to not handle failure well. And I thought they were going to go there, but they also didn't really. Like this could have been the first real setback for Phoebe, as somebody who is used to figuring everything out and being 3 steps ahead of everybody, and now she doesn't know the answer because there isn't one. And her parents are maybe not doing the best job at kind of preparing her for it or helping her, deal with something. Like, you can see where this could have gone. But I'm just saying it didn't really.
This is the problem, is that you had this idea that these writers, had a well thought out story that they wanted to tell. It's like, clearly there isn't a story that they wanted to tell here, which is why it's so convoluted. It's like, you could tell how this went. It's like, we need to make another Ghostbusters movie. Oh, we can maybe do this cool idea with it's Frozen Empire. The villain has ice powers or whatever. We have this character who's now kind of the stepdad. We can maybe throw a few, it all kind of feels obligatory, everything that's happening in there, as opposed to a well-crafted story or something that, was interesting to tell.
And there's pieces of it, right? Like when she kind of hangs out with Ray and he's too old and she's too young, and there's something there. They just don't do anything with it. That's the frustrating part. If it was just 2 hours of them busting ghosts, then I would have less of a problem with it, because then it would be better at what it is trying to do. But it is trying to do 5 things at once and doesn't really have the space or the creativity or has put in the effort to make any of the pieces work. In my opinion.
I was gonna say, guys, can we be, I wouldn't say so critical, but critical over a family friendly film? Because if we looked at it from a family movie lens perspective, like you said before, the kid behind you, the way he reacted was as if this was the best film ever. So
But it's not like again, you know.
I don't think they're trying to make this a universal thing. Yeah, they do have iconic characters, but I just think those are, you know, nostalgia insertions that's just there to make it bearable for people like us. But their main audience is the kids.
It's never.
A couple of different things. One of them is impressing 10-year-olds is not the be all and end all of quality storytelling. Right, like 10-year-olds are impressed with a lot of things. And I think they would be impressed more with a better story, or they would stay, would stay engaged. Like if over time, as they got older, they discovered more and more layers. Like Star Wars is kind of like this, right? Like 9-year-olds have been enjoying classic, like the original Star Wars trilogy for 50 years, and then as they get older, they start developing, like noticing more layers. That's why it has staying power. I don't know that this movie, like it doesn't have, like this doesn't have to be Star Wars, right? I'm just saying something can be for general audiences, for families, and still be good. And the ones that are good are the ones where different members of the family get different things out of it. And here, I don't know that anybody but the 9-year-old will get much out of it.
There's a reason why a movie like Home Alone is a classic and still got, you know, held up in high esteem. And, you know, anything that's happened since Home Alone 2 has been, you know, completely garbage because it hasn't captured the same kind of like essence and the same storytelling that was sort of done in the first two movies, where you've got a kid that's been left behind. You know, that's every parent's, you know, nightmare. And obviously you've got the bits in between, like, you know, him setting up the traps and, you know, beating up the bad guys and stuff like that, which is entertaining to the kids. But at the end of it, you've got this like heartwarming story of like a kid that's grew up in a dysfunctional family, but then at the end of it kind of like realizes the importance of family, even though he's part of like this kind of like dysfunctional setup where, like, you know, he might be getting a little bit bullied by his brother and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's not an excuse to have poor writing in movies.
And like the first, like the good seasons of The Simpsons are the same way, right? Like a child can get enjoyment out of that, and so can the parents, because and they will get enjoyment out of different aspects of the story. So just saying that, like, this is supposed to be a breezy, fun action adventure, but is the action adventure actually that good? Like there's this one scene at the start where they catch the ghost, and you know, and that's kind of like a typical opening scene, right? That's how you show your heroes doing their daily routine before the plot starts. But that was kind of it for exciting stuff.
Wait,
it was really aimed at fans who really want to get into the lore and really want to expand this universe, right? Like the like Winston's Foundation. I thought that was really interesting, and nothing happened with it. Or Ray's Occult Bookstore, and all these different references to both real and made up occult history. I was very sad to find out that the Laughing Jesus of Copenhagen are apparently not a real thing. But the other things they mentioned were. So there's fairly deep into, or at least dips a little bit into like occult history. And if they had done more of that, then it would have been a richer movie. And the list goes on like that.
Okay, well, because I remember you guys said I'm sure there was some stuff that you liked. So wasn't there any highlight scenes in there where you thought, okay,
I've mentioned 3 so far. I think Nadim as an idea is really cool. And he's the most Ghostbuster type, like classic Ghostbusters character, until they turn him into a joke. If he had stayed like that and maybe had a little character arc towards taking more responsibility or something, and if they had maybe explored more why this super important knowledge hadn't been passed on from his grandmother to him, that would have been other being told, I guess you didn't listen. That's kind of the extent of exploring that topic. Then this whole idea that Winston is the guy who will believe anything you say as long as there's a paycheck in it, right? That's the quote from the original movie. So that's where this character started. And now this guy has had financial success, and what he does with his money is to build on the Ghostbusters project, somebody else's dream, right? Because he has come to believe in it so much. That's really cool. And so he's built this foundation, and he's training new Ghostbusters, and he's franchising it out, and all of that. All of that has potential. It's just not really, like, we don't really see it in action. We see it a little bit, but not very much. And then there's this whole idea of expanding the history of ghostbusting, like we've mentioned before. That's also really cool, also like as an idea. but also not developed, and also not important to the story, and also kind of a loose end.
So like on my side as well, one where again it had the potential but it wasn't followed through completely was in like Winston's lab, whatever thing, where you could see like the brass orb was kind of like messing with sort of the whatever like energy that was keeping the ghost within, and they had that really dark ghost that looked like it was like really haunting and like looked really evil, and I thought that they might have like some slight element of like horror in there or whatever with that ghost, but again it's a family movie so it never really went anywhere. I don't think the ghost escaped, or I might have forgot if he did or didn't, but I don't think the ghost ever did escape. But the tease of that, like of where he almost got out but then didn't, but then they're kind of teasing that he might,
because he was scared by the bad guy.
Yeah,
like the containment fields were off, and they started poking out of the containment cages.
Yeah,
but then they wouldn't leave because the bad guy was around and they were scared.
Yeah,
I thought that was fine. Like actually, this idea that all these ghosts are scared of the bad guy, that's fine.
Yeah. I kind of just hope that he'd come out and like terrorize a little bit, because he looked quite interesting. He looked quite cool, but yeah.
I like the Possessor. That was fun.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Although very stupid scene when he took over the stone lion and then the stone lion started roaring. I was a bit like, okay.
Then in the last scene, it's back. Then in the last scene, they pan towards the library and the lion is there again.
Okay. Oh, I didn't.
They just messed up.
Oh, I don't think I even noticed that. But yeah, the whole lion roaring, I kind of rolled my eyes at. I was like, okay, of course the lion's going to roar, but I was like, I mean, just not. It doesn't make sense.
Well, what does it make sense about it? It's got possessed by a ghost, so it came alive.
I feel like, guys, I think it would be.
Where's this coming from? But
I think we need to. I think we were failing. I understand the story, right? The storyteller wasn't great, but I think when it comes to this the fun scenes, like personally for me, I thought like a highlight moment was the whole bag scene where, in the library, the bag was pretty much running away from them. I don't know what that little red thing was.
That's the Possessor.
Yeah.
Yes, the Possessor. Yes, I enjoyed that scene. It wasn't nothing too memorable about it, but it was just fun, and that's how I think. And it can be a problem because I do feel like when it comes to these memorable franchises, I don't think they're trying to create longevity with them. I just think they're trying to create momentary fun. Now, I'm guessing we see that as a problem, right? Well, you two in particular, you see it as a problem because because obviously with the films back in the day, like you mentioned, Home Alone, that has longevity. That's a film that we're gonna look back on and continue watching like for generations, whatever, because it has longevity. But it seems like we're shifting into an era where they're creating movies on momentary fun. Do you think? Because it seems to be working. Sorry.
Why didn't they put any into the movie?
Fun.
Yeah.
Well, there were moments. I'm not saying this was, like I said this was an above average film. So it wasn't bad, but it was just above average. It was borderline.
Like I said earlier, I'm okay with it being like a lighthearted action thing, but there wasn't a lot of lighthearted action in it. No. Like large chunks of it are Phoebe's drama and the family and Walter Peck still doing the same thing he did 40 years ago. And so on, right? So it's.
But that's my point, though. My point was going to be because we're seeing it from our lens rather than a family-friendly lens. Because I think this is definitely a family film, and I do think the kids are going to find this more enjoyable than anyone else. And I think that's where we're shifting into a whole feel-good momentary. Like with these movies, it's going to be a feel-good. It's going to be a feel-good movies for especially the kids. For us,
I mean, those 10-year-olds are free to do their own spoiler casts. Like this is our opinion, right?
Yeah.
But it's still. But like we still have to take. I believe we have to take that into consideration because it's like I said, it's a family-friendly film. So it's like, what more can we expect?
Family-friendly is that the same thing as Bad Story?
Well, no, I agree. It's not a great story. I definitely do agree on that.
Can I say? For someone that's about to have a kid, I do not want to be turning up to these kid movies and watching terrible stories whilst my kid has fun. Like I at least want to, if I'm being obliged to.
That's true.
Please let me at least make something interesting, like Frozen, for example. Like you don't have to you don't have to just make a movie full of gags or whatever like that and have bad story. Like you can make it interesting for both parties.
I think you're in for a lot of.
But that kind of goes against.
The good news is it'll be over by 2040.
Yeah.
For you.
For me, anyways, yeah.
But that kind of goes against what we were saying before, though, in terms of how make know who your audience is.
Yeah.
Because you're saying.
I'm not saying you can make a movie like that.
No, not you. Hervé said that.
Tell a coherent story that is about something.
No, Daniel, sorry, not you. Hervé was the one that said that. I said that kind of goes against what he was saying before about have a film and then know who you're aiming that audience towards.
Yeah.
But then how much? So like I know that I mentioned in the previous video or the video coming up later or whatever, like that there was the kid that like had a great time at the movie, but that was one kid. Like
you say that about like Star Wars too, like about this Star Wars sequels, like this 9-year-old enjoyed it. Why? How dare you criticize it? And that's I'm not saying you are doing this, but that's almost like using a child as a human shield, kind of thing. It's like it's kind of saying like your criticism is invalid because it's going to upset this 9-year-old. How dare you?
I'm not saying the criticism is invalid. I'm just saying is the criticism warranted when we're not its audience?
Like, how many people love this in even for the kids, like how many kids will love this in like a couple of years? Like kids still love Frozen and movies such as that for a reason, because like they were like well done. Whereas like something like this, I don't know how much staying power it even has amongst the kids, to be honest.
Like I grew up in the golden age of Disney, like where like Aladdin and the Lion King and all of these things came out within like one back to back. And those were good stories with characters and arcs, and they were about something. And because of that, they were more enjoyable. Like we didn't understand this at 9 years old, but we kind of felt it. Like this captured our this isn't just like high-minded snobbery when we talk about character arcs and theme and stuff like that. These are the ingredients that go into making a good story, and I think it's worthwhile trying to understand why some stories work and others don't. But these things are not there for their own sake. They are because, on average, they make stories better and they increase the chances of a story working. It's kind of like baking a cake by leaving out the sugar. Like you can do it, and you can talk about where somebody likes this cake, but that doesn't mean it's a good cake.
But listen, guys, I don't disagree with what you guys are saying at all in terms of like, listen, the storytelling wasn't great. This wasn't a great movie. Like I said, it was just above average. But
it could easily have been a better movie. Like, just put in a proper character arc, make it about something, make it about Phoebe's story of trying to become a responsible adult. Like, the pieces are there, right? She has guidance from Ray, right, who has lived his entire life pursuing this goal or this project and not wanting to let go of it. And you've got the brother Trevor, who is like every 18-year-old who really wants you to know that he's 18, and feels really grown up about it, but he isn't really, because he's still just 18. There's all these, or that there's the Paul Rudd character who wants to be a responsible, nurturing father and doesn't really know how. There are pieces there, and you could have just arranged these pieces in a way that adds up to a storyline. Does the romance with Melody amount to anything really? Does it say anything about Phoebe's character? Does it put her on a journey that is worthwhile watching? Does it say anything, or does it just happen?
I hear you. I definitely hear what you guys are saying. I just think, it kind of falls into the point. It goes into what I was saying before. I think we're transitioning into a new era where longevity isn't the goal anymore.
But at the same time, it's the streaming era where you want people to want to watch your movie over and over. So and doing so, they stay subscribed to Disney Plus. Right? Like, why do you want? Like, I understand that a lot of movies are made to be disposable now. I'm just saying I don't really understand why.
Because it goes into the point. It goes into the point that you made before in our previous videos about how a lot of these franchises aren't losing money. You know what I'm saying? They break even most of the time. Yeah. So it's like they have a formula that it's working. So it's like, okay, less effort, and we're still, we're still getting a return. So like, I just think it's got more to do with effort. I just don't think they want to put. I don't know why. I think maybe they think spending money on good story. Maybe they just don't want to spend that.
But a better story doesn't automatically cost more money. Like having the same actors say different lines doesn't inherently cost more money in the way that CGI time would, or locations would, or other or like bigger name actors or whatever. Like there are some things that inherently cost more money, and better writing doesn't inherently cost more money in that way. And if like this like hundreds and hundreds of people spend like 2 years of their lives making this movie, while they were at it, why couldn't they put together a story?
The only thing that costs more is getting competent writers that can actually write.
Like in the sense that a better writer will probably charge more, right?
Yeah.
So that's it costs more, but like
it's not
given that you've hired people, just writing like actually putting together proper character arcs and more interesting lines that say stuff that inherently doesn't make the movie more expensive or take longer to shoot or anything like that. Like you can't say, well, we didn't have the budget to have these characters have a character arc. That doesn't make sense.
Does some of the blame fall on executives? Because, you hear a lot of stories all the time about, what the executives want in the movie, how they want to sell the movie. Of course, you had a lot of the old characters come back in some form in this movie and probably the previous movie as well. And, a lot of that will be sort of like directed by, executives wanting to make money and wanting to like nostalgia bait and like, maybe like meddling where they probably shouldn't and not giving the creatives enough freedom. So I feel like in this instance, I could probably not completely excuse them. I don't think they're, completely excused from it, the writers of the show. But I feel like they probably are working with one hand tied behind their back for the most part. Maybe, maybe not completely this movie, but a lot of these franchise movies, I feel like a lot of the creatives work with one hand tied behind their back and don't really tell the story that they probably fully want to tell.
Yeah, I don't know if in this case there is such a person. I didn't recognize there's two people with writing credits. I briefly looked at their filmography and nothing really jumped out at me. Yeah. I don't know who, if they otherwise, are good or at what they do or not. Yeah. I think generally these movies are made by a committee, and that basically works against telling a good story because it isn't somebody's vision for where to take Ghostbusters.
And that's why they get these writers that haven't got the best writing credentials, because it's like, here's a big franchise, you can put your name against this franchise, but you're going to do what we tell you to do in the movie, basically. Yeah. So, writers with a little bit more pedigree, with a little bit more kind of like substance behind what they've written aren't really being hired by, Marvel, especially. Like Marvel loves to hire these Rick and Morty writers and stuff like that, writers that don't have, big movie writing experience to do their movies, because Marvel has a formula and you're going to write to Marvel's formula, which really works against the movies most of the time.
Yeah, although I've come, like my thinking on that has evolved a little bit recently, because it seems like whether or not a movie works is really more luck of the dice than anything. Like some people who have done great work in the past can turn out complete garbage, and people who in the past have done nothing but trash can churn out something good. Yes. Like there's very little. Like every once in a while you get like a Steven Spielberg or something who just makes gold after like hits gold every time, at least for a long period of time. But I think so many factors go into making a movie that, like, even if everything goes right, that like there isn't a secret recipe where if you just do this one thing, then it will be a good movie.
I agree with that. Like, and I agree with that. I just feel like they kind of go with the people with less experience just for having that greater control, for that tighter control. But again, like you said, good writers can make bad movies. Bad writers can eventually make good movies. And of course, you have to kind of cut your teeth at it, the very first time. Everyone had that first good movie that chance that they were given. So yeah, I don't disagree with it, but I feel like maybe the whole like kind of like, the critique comes more at like the whole committee thing and, having too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, if anything, there's too many good ideas in this, right? Because they all crowd each other out.
Yeah.
Right. Like I can name like 5 different things that could have just been the movie, and none of them have the oxygen to really get to the point where it really becomes compelling. And on top of that, just general dialogue I thought wasn't great. But like there's. Like you could split this into at least 4 movies, I think.
You have too many there's too many characters in the movie to really like focus on it. Like if they'd kind of stripped away some of the side characters that came with sort of the Winston's lab, or didn't give them as much screen time or whatever, if they maybe stripped off some of the old Ghostbusters and told like a good family story where again you have the daughter, I think you touched on a good idea there, where this is the first time that she's kind of faced a bit of adversity in her life. At the same time, you've got the father figure that's kind of having to step in and having to like try to be a stepfather and having to deal with this as well. I feel like you've got really good pieces in there, that less characters, more focus, and you could have sort of told a better story and had more room to tell a better story.
Or you could have gone the other way and just said, okay, we have Ray, who is this lifelong enthusiast with not a lot of structure around it, and then we've got Winston, who has built this institution, but they don't really have a goal, and then you've got Phoebe, who has all the talent in the world, but not a lot of knowledge, or like she knows stuff, but she doesn't have a lot of experience and a lot of structure to it. Like these things you can kind of see these kind of going, like these could meet in the middle, right? Then you've got Nadim, who has this heritage and this legacy. But it's just completely adrift and is just figuring things out one day at a time. And then he's thrust into that ecosystem. Like you can see how you've got pieces here.
You got pieces, yeah. My other question, now that you mentioned the Nadim again, because he really annoys me. Like, why do they have to make these characters really dumb for it to be comedic? Yeah. Like, I get the whole like kind of like the grifting thing and the store scene, and I think that worked in the movie, but everything else, it really frustrates me. It's like you can do comedy so many different other ways, but they keep kind of recycling the same thing of having these grown-ass babies in these movies.
It's very formula.
Yeah. I don't know. It's very tiring. It's very tiring to see. It's not funny anymore.
And he got worse over time as well. I thought he got worse over time. Like this whole basic thing of I'm just here to make a buck. And maybe that's a good starting point for a character, but maybe take it into a more sympathetic area where he learns responsibility or and steps up, like which he kind of did in the movie, but not in a way that was really all that compelling, because he still kind of was a joke at that point.
Yeah.
So where do you think they should go next with this franchise? Because I'm sure they're going to release another film sometime in the future. What do you think they should do? Do you think maybe they should drop a prequel? Maybe it should be a sequel.
I say just keep going. So I didn't watch Afterlife, but I just kind of I kind of know the plot. It feels like these two movies are kind of set up, right? These two movies together kind of revitalize the Ghostbusters project and move pieces into position. And now that everybody is where they need to be, and we've got a supporting cast, we've got an environment, we've got a setting. And now maybe we can start telling stories. So if I was in charge of the franchise after this, I would just say, okay, the events of the first two movies, forget about them. Doesn't matter anymore. We've got characters. We've got a foundation. Now we start telling stories. And I think like the big takeaway from this movie is that it feels like throwing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks. Right? We've mentioned a couple of them. I also quite like the drones, for example. Like how they are expanding on existing, like on the old tech. They're not using the exact same stuff that the Ghostbusters did in the 80s. Like now they have drones and the internet and whatever else. Like just keep going and think about how these characters might do engage in ghostbusting in the 2020s. And I think these individual characters, I don't think they have that much potential. I don't like Phoebe at all, really. But maybe when she's not a child anymore, maybe you can reinvent her or something. But there's I think the way you move forward is to just start fresh with these characters. Like you keep the characters, but you start fresh with a new story. And I think the pieces are there, and they just have to pick the pieces, and they have to tell a good story with it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like they've dropped two films that haven't been memorable enough. So you're right. They should keep the same characters but just create a new story, because
like the characters are fine. I think like there's just none of them that really jump out at me and say I want to see what's next for this character. But they're all at least fine.
But that's what I'm saying. Like in saying that though, the reason why I paused was because it was like it's still not reflecting in their box office sales. So it's like,
Well, they did well, no? They did.
that's what I'm saying. It's like that's like, a change is not reflecting in their box office. So it's like it changed, like, their sales isn't screaming you need to change.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like if it's the why should they change if people are going to go and watch it? Because they watched it, like, if, do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, so yeah, literally, why should they change if people are still watching it?
So Afterlife narrowly broke even. By my math, it made about $16 million profit just on the box office. And obviously that was good enough to get a sequel, and this one is currently not on track to make its money back. But at least there's interest there.
It's got a 44% Rotten Tomato score, and this is the problem with these franchises, is that you're making the money, or you're at least breaking even, but you're getting negative reviews after negative reviews for this movie. And I think, like, maybe other people have been a little bit more harsh than we have on this movie. I think, like, we've all kind of somewhat saw some of the potentials of the movie, but
I've seen mostly positive or mixed to positive opinions.
Yeah, it's mixed.
Very few people seem to really trashing it.
Yeah, it's currently set at 44%. I mean, the audience score is actually higher. Audience score is 84%. So for the most part, the audience love it. So maybe that's a potential issue where they kind of look at that and feel like, okay, we're doing the right things for the audience, and if most people love it, then more power to them, whatever. But I mean, it kind of actually kind of negates my point in terms of, like, saying that they probably, like, need to see that they can still make money because people have an interest in it, but they can tell a better story. But it just seems like the critics are the ones that didn't like it as much as the rest of us, or the rest of the general audience. So that kind of takes away from my point. So keep doing what you're doing, keep churning out, keep making all the money. It's all good. But I mean, I actually, to be honest, what you're saying there is, it might have, like, broken even, or just about made profit, but you have to think about how you can actually grow it and how you can, like, maximize your profits and continue making more money, and eventually, like, sell merchandise or do a deal with Fortnite, which everyone does, and get your skins in there and stuff like that. You have to have characters that people want to invest in, and maybe that's what they can focus on in the next one.
On merchandise, I've seen it said that Ghostbusters by itself just sells a lot of merchandise, just like the Ghost logo, like the Ghostbuster logo on T-shirt, that will always sell. People just need to be reminded of the franchise every couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So
and
maybe that's all these movies have to do from a financial standpoint.
Yeah.
My thing is just, like, if you're already at it, why not tell a story?
Yeah, that's just
right.
That's the one. Yeah.
But that's the industry's problem, though. Like, it doesn't make sense because they have the resources to, get what they want, like get the best writers and etc. But they just don't, like. They just don't see.
Gets made anyway.
Sorry?
I'm amazed that any movie ever gets made anyway, in terms of how dysfunctional the whole movie making process is, and how chaotic, and how many cooks there are in the kitchen, and how many competing interests, and everybody needs to get their voice in to advance their own career and stuff like that. Like executives having to show that they made that they did something and stuff like that. I'm amazed that any movie ever is any good at all. So I don't know, like, but I'm not even, like, suggesting a complete redo, right? I'm not saying be this completely other thing, right? Like with Star Wars, like, I have a pitch for what the trilogy should have, the Disney trilogy should have been, and it's completely different, right? It's just a different story. Here, it's like you have the pieces, and if you could just, cut a little bit, like cut 2/3 of them and focus on this one aspect, and weave that into an actual story, that could have been really, really interesting. And like a Ghostbusters story that's a coming of age story from the point of view of Phoebe could have been really interesting. Like, maybe not to me because I'm old, but like for a 15-year-old, absolutely. And that could have been the on-ramp to be a lifelong Ghostbusters fan. And, like, the pieces were there. You have the actors, you have the story, you have the beats. Why not?
And again, there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to make money. With all these, like, franchises, like, everything is to make profit. Like, everyone wants to make more money, but I feel like, just kind of emphasize Daniel's point, is just, you can want to do that, and you're going to do that, but just at least make it a little bit more memorable, like tell a better story whilst you're trying to do it.
I would argue you would make more money that way.
You probably would. They would.
Like, if you like if you could really get us really invested in these characters and in this world,
Yeah, because
we would spend more money, not less.
Yeah, because like like word of mouth. Like look what happened with Dune, like Dune 2. So but yeah, like I said, I just think it's always been a question mark in the industry. Like they have the resources to make the best film, but they just
But they don't.
like exactly just they don't. And I feel like that's just going to be a question mark, an unanswered question or an unanswered observation, which we won't find the answer to for quite some time. But yeah, man. But guys, last thoughts.
So yeah, so for me, it all comes down to the pieces are there, the execution is lacking, and so it doesn't add up to anything memorable. And I actually cringed my way through that movie. Like it just wasn't fun. Like you couldn't even switch your brain off because there was too much talking for that, right? So like the movie wants to be about things, but it doesn't really reach the finish line. It kind of tries to run 5 different races at the same time, but they have different finish lines, and so it doesn't get to any of them.
Okay, what would you rate it?
Probably 5 out of Slimer.
I have no clue what that means, but
Daniel, you're a legend. Okay.
I mean, I don't want to kind of like beat the same drum over and over again, so I'll keep my one short. It was cool. It was cool, man. Again, good ideas in there, just probably not executed completely well. Hopefully, they can have another attempt at it and try to tell a better story. I personally don't think they're going to learn from any of these lessons. So, yeah, I'll give it 5 out of 10. Just middle of the ground.
Well, I'm still going to stick to what I said. I do agree with a lot of the opinions that were stated. I still do believe it was a good family film from a friendly lens rather than my own lens. From my own lens, not so much. From a family-friendly lens, I feel like it was a good movie that the family could enjoy with the kids. So on that basis alone, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10.
I'm going to revise mine for having a absolutely awful villain in the third act. I'm going to bring it down to a 4.9. I'm going to take away a point and put it below 5 for that. But yeah, for having a very weak villain.
For the villain, I still don't feel. I feel like the villain in the first, like the way it was presented in the first 2 acts, was really strong.
Yeah.
I just feel like it was this letdown, but in the first.
We're kind of at the end, almost at the end here. But like, I was going to mention this earlier. Have either of you seen the original Ghostbusters?
I have, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, if I have, I don't remember it.
So
yeah,
it's been a long time for me as well, so I'm a bit fuzzy on the details. But the basic idea is that they're fighting this ancient god who wants to destroy the world. And they're just 4 random dudes who kind of stumbled into this situation. Like in the original Ghostbusters, the who the villain was kind of informing the characterization of the main characters, right? Because this is the kind of situation where these epic heroes who have the tools and knowledge and the bravery to save the world and all of that, but here's just 4 guys with vacuum cleaners on their backs. And they're basically like
guys.
So it's like 4 guys with vacuum cleaners on their backs, right? And they're basically just bullshitting their way through it through saving the world. Like that's the punchline to the joke. And I think that is why like a movie like the original Ghostbusters resonates, because it is a joke that with a setup, an execution, and a punchline. And who the villain is part of that, right? So, and this is just like, I'm not saying this has to follow that exact formula, but like a formula or follow an idea, right? This like you can like swap out the bad guy for anything else, as long as it's powerful, and it's the same story. Even controlling the ghost isn't that important to the story. You can still have the Phoebe and Melody thing happen in a different context.
Question: do you feel like?
I was gonna say, this kind of ties back to one of our previous videos where we discussed, what makes a good villain and what makes a good hero, and it's that, there has to be some kind of like story between the two. Like one has to be motivating the other, and there has to be like some type of like one has to affect the other, and here it's completely separate. There is no effect. There isn't. They're literally two separate entities that could never, like, if they never met, it wouldn't change anything about the story.
Question: do you think it's lost that comedic, ridiculous aspect to the film? Because remember, like you stated, that it was four guys with vacuums chasing ghosts, I think that's one of the that's like the highlight of Ghostbusters. Like, you're chasing these freaking, like,
it started out as a Saturday Night Live joke. Like, those four were on Saturday Night Live, and they had this idea for a sketch, and that kind of snowballed into a movie. Right? Like, that's the origin of Ghostbusters. Like, it's not a serious movie in that sense. It's a joke. A joke that kind of got out of control in that sense, like, because it turned into a whole movie. But and I think that is kind of also what's missing here. Like that is why I like the Nadim character so much, because he's in that same vein, while still being his own thing. Like, he's not just a carbon copy of one of the original four Ghostbusters. He's just like a fifth take on that kind of character after the main cast.
And I feel like that was the essence of Ghostbusters, and they're kind of losing that now with pretty much all the upgrades, in my opinion.
It has to evolve eventually. Like, the world can't.
It has to evolve, but there's certain things that don't need to evolve. Like, I don't think I
don't think it's being replaced by anything better. It's the thing. They just took away the joke, but didn't replace it with very much. They still have the gadgets, they still have the traps, they still have the proton packs, they still have Ecto 1. And what else? Like, what is this movie about? Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. And like, Ghostbusters was about something.
Yeah.
This really isn't. And it doesn't have to be about the same thing as the original Ghostbusters, but something would be nice.
Yeah. I agree.
Like you have these threads of responsibility and legacy and purpose and all of these things, and different characters who approach those topics from different angles. Why not tell a story about that while you're already there?
I agree. Well, guys, thank you for tuning into today's episode. I hope you.
So, however you started out liking this movie, have I done my job?
Do you know what? You kind of brought it down a little bit, but not by much, because I don't think you were completely harsh on the movie. I feel like we can agree that there was probably like some good ideas in there and some good, some things that could have been executed better. So you brought it down a little bit, not completely all the way down.
We should do ratings before we discuss and after we discuss.
That'd be
difference.
I'll remember to do that. Cool. Yeah, that's actually a good idea, to see if it ends up changing at the end. Cool. All right. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in. Hervé, please, your plug-in.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
And let us know your thoughts, and whether or not you agreed with what we had to say, and whether or not if you enjoyed the Ghostbusters. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next week. What are we going to be reviewing? We'll let you guys. You guys will see what we do next week. We'll fill you lot in. You'll know. Au revoir.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.